All right, everyone. Welcome back here to another episode on the Lure Lab. As always, I am your host, the Captain Andrew Full, and today we have an awesome episode. We're diving into the fall series here. It's September, and one of the biggest techniques to catch a really big bass this time of year is finding the grass and having yourself a time with a punching rig. And today's guest is somebody who I think is pretty proficient at punching, so I figured let's get him back onto this show for a second time. And Wes Logan is going to be joining us to break down his punching rig and where to throw it, when to throw it, and why you should throw it. But we should get him on here, let him talk instead of me, because he'll probably be able to explain it a lot better than I can, as it is something I'm not very proficient in. So let's get Wes on here and talk about punching. What's going on, buddy?
What's up, man? How are you?
Good. You ready? Are you happy to be back south where you can actually punch and not catch brownfish?
Yeah. I mean, the bad thing is you can punch and flip up there, but you're not gonna you're not gonna do any good. Like you're gonna have a blast, but you catch 17 pounds and you're gonna be in last. So
Yeah, that's big facts for New
yeah,
York. There's some lakes that are largemouth like predominant to win with, and I
not
sent
where
you a
we
picture
not
of
where we go.
flipping reeds with a jig and catching some big
Yeah.
ones. But yeah, where you go, I in the 90s and early 2000s, that's what Denny
Oh
Power
yeah.
did, was punch reeds, right? And
Oh
if you
yeah.
get lucky and get that 6 pounder or a couple fives, you're doing all
Oh yeah.
right.
Yeah. Now, not to say that can't play up there. Once you catch 21, 22 pounds of smallmouth, you go catch a 6 pound head. But right now, I think you have the opportunity just as good to catch a 6 pound smallmouth. So I mean, why even go do it?
And if you're good at it, it's kind of fun to catch those smallmouth doing weird
True,
things.
true, absolutely. Yeah,
And
it's
if
hard. It's
not,
hard to beat them.
yeah. And if you're not good at it, you at least get to watch them eat a bunch of random stuff on your live scope. And you're like,
Yeah,
man, look at that
yeah,
damn thing.
yeah. Look at that stupid smallmouth.
Yeah, they are pretty dumb, aren't they?
Yeah,
When
they
when
can
they
be.
when they want to eat, they are just dumb.
Yeah, they can be the most easy fish to catch and the hardest all at the same time. But I don't. I've done. I had 3 derbies worth of smallmouth. I'm ready to talk about a largemouth in some grass because that's like my favorite thing to do.
Now, before we get there, have you ever caught a smallmouth flipping grass?
No, but I have caught I think it was like a 566 smallmouth on my swim jig in like a foot and a half of water.
Now that's fun as
Dude,
crap.
it was the most amazing bite I've ever had. I didn't know what it was when I hooked. It's on film, and
Just
I've yet to watch the film, like the guys filming me, but it was a giant, dude. And it was awesome. It was the best bite I've ever had.
was that down where you're at, like in Alabama, or was it up
No,
here?
it was up north. It was up
Oh,
north.
that's dumb.
It was a grown. I mean, I assume it was lost. Like I don't. Somebody might have caught it like somewhere and went and turned it
It's a
loose by the
retrip.
bank. Yeah, I mean, dude, it was beautiful too. Like just didn't have a mark on it, a butterball, dude. Little one of them small mouths, dude. It just come up here and just rolled on it, and I was like, oh my god.
You hit that thing, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, dude, I hit it, and as soon as I hit it, dude, it started like jumping like that tarpon jump. I'm like, oh my god, dude, it's like a 6 pounder. Like, it
Yeah,
was.
like I think one of my favorite ways to catch smallmouth when they want to eat it is a chatterbait, because they rip the rod out of your hand
Oh
and they
yeah.
do the same exact thing.
Yep.
But we're not here to talk about swim jigs and chatterbaits, right? We're talking about
That's right.
punching. And for those who don't know what punching is, what is punching? And also, can you elaborate as to like when and where you should do it?
Yeah, I mean, punching it's a pretty broad term because a lot of people associate it with thick grass and matted up grass and stuff like that, and that's where most of the time you do it. But you can actually per se punch stuff like if you have, we call them trash mats, like there's reservoirs and lakes down here where you get a lot of rain in the springtime, and you'll have those junk mats that wash up like in these little run-ins, and it kind of creates the same thing. Basically, all you're doing is putting your bait and a weight through some type of canopy. It could be, it basically could be anything. But grass is mainly, the primary thing that everybody's like, man, let's go punch some grass, because a lot of times you can find big groups of them, especially in the fall time of year. You'll find actually a school in in matted up grass, and it may not necessarily be the grass that the fish are holding on. They're in the grass, but it could be something that's on the bottom, and you don't really realize that. But you'll find you'll flip down, if you've got a stretch of matted up grass, whether it be a hydrilla, milfoil, something like that, or a mix, you got a 300-yard stretch. Well, there's only going to be a 20-yard stretch that's really good, and it's something else, whether there's more bait there or something on the bottom. But just basically a rundown of what punching is. You're going to have a heavier than average size weight, mainly always 3/4 or heavier. I've never really punched anything with like a half ounce, I don't think.
Probably be hard to get through.
Yeah, because I mean that's where I always try and start, and you always want to go as light as you can get away with to get through and penetrate through what you're going through. So I'll always start with like a 3/4 or a 1 ounce, and just kind of work your way up from there. Like I said, the lightest weight you can get away with is better for your hookup percentages. Because I mean, dude, you got a 2-ounce piece of tungsten down there, dude, hitting his mouth. Like you're not gonna catch them all. You're gonna lose some. Yeah. So that's kind of the deal with that. And then a lot of guys, sometimes you use a punch skirt, which I really like a punch skirt when I can get away with it, just depending on how the fish are, what kind of mood they're in. And then a big. I like a straight shank, a really stout hook, but I mean we'll get into that a little bit later. But that's kind of the breakdown: big rod, big line, and then you kind of just tweak little things here and there depending on your cover and what time of the year, whether you're late fall, early fall, depending on bait selection, stuff like that.
Now, based on the time of year, so like early fall and the late fall, do you choose different baits?
Yeah.
Or is it always the same bait, or you just change colors?
Yeah, a lot of times, and it kind of depends on what I'm per se punching. I kind of put punching into like if you're
Categories.
even flipping. Yeah, like if you're flipping like scattered milfoil clumps, like you can do a lot up north. We can do that here at Gunnersville, and I think even Pickwick's getting some grass back into it. But like, I kind of classify that. It's more just flipping grass, but you're still, you're punching. Like a lot of times I'll use a 3/4, and that's where I kind of take two different approaches to it. If I'm in some really thick stuff like matted up deal, I like to have a real streamlined bait. So I'll use something like a Z-Hog from Zoom. And completely vice versa to that, if I'm in some scattered stuff like isolated clumps or kind of stuff that a couple inches under the water, I like to have something with a little bit of action because it doesn't have to break through and penetrate through anywhere. So the streamlined stuff is when you want to be able to get in and out of places where your appendages aren't really dragging and keeping you from getting through, to where if I'm just flipping into some isolated stuff that's not near as thick, that's when I'll use like a Zoom Z-Crawl, or even I've used a Z-Crawl Junior a lot, just a little bit smaller profile, just because the fish can kind of see it a little bit better. They're liable to be a little bit more spread out, and the bait can get through there really well. So that's kind of how the bait selection like style goes for what I'm looking at. And then color wise is just, I'll always start with some type of green pumpkin on, and then a black and blue color, and just kind of swap it up a little bit. I mean, a lot of times, sometimes you can be lucky enough and whichever one you pick up first, they're really jumping on, or, sometimes it's a product of elimination, where I'll use this one for a little while. Or if I go through a place that I really think should have had them, or where I've caught them before and I don't get any bites, I may go back down it for a minute, with a different color, and then kind of just let the fish tell you what they want. But it's hard to beat, starting with a green and then a real dark color.
Yeah, and does that matter on like? So let's throw this example at you. Like, if it's a cloudy, miserable, rainy day, are you still going punching, or are you going to do something else? Like, can you catch them punching on miserable, cloudy days?
Yes, absolutely.
But what is like the prime condition to catch them in?
Yeah, the main thing that really bothers me punching wise, weather, is the wind. I do not like the wind blowing because, and it's not even a fishing like a fish biting situation. It's when you have the wind blowing in on those mats. A lot of times it compresses them, dude. It makes it almost impossible to get through them, and it just makes it harder to fish. Makes you be a lot less efficient, and that's the whole deal. Flipping, whether and not even punching, just flipping in general, you have to be efficient. Going in and out of places really quiet, and a lot of times in a punching scenario, you're dealing with a little bit of a pressured fish situation because it's so visual for people. Like they can see the mat, they can see like, okay, I'm gonna go flip that because it looks really good. It's matted up and all that good stuff. So you kind of want to be as quiet as possible. And when you got a lot of wind and all that stuff, it just compresses all of that matted up stuff, and it makes it a little tougher to get in and out of. But I've caught them just as good on days when it was thunderstorming and raining. I can think back to a tournament I did really good at Gunnersville in my rookie year that I was almost able to win. When I found the stretch that I ended up catching them on flipping, it was raining so hard I couldn't even see in front of my face. Like, dude, I had like my hood on, like I could just tell like I was right on top of these mats, and dude, they were biting like at any other time. And I don't know if it was the front had come in and they were chewing, but I don't really pay attention to the weather that much. I don't like the wind blowing for that specific reason. It just makes it hard to fish.
Is there any like environmental clues when you're on the water? Like you're basically up on the trolling motor, right? And you might be fishing like scatter grass, but on the inside you can see matted up vegetation. Is there any like environmental clues that are like, you know what, they're not out here, but based on the sounds and things that are going on, I should go up there and try and punch? Or do you just kind of always keep it open and go back and forth?
I mean, I kind of, like you said, I like to keep it open a little bit, but you always want to be paying attention. And that's anytime you're fishing, but you get in a little area that you think should have them. You kind of want to, be looking around, be listening, listening for blow ups. I kind of like to start on the edge, honestly. Like, I don't want to just barge through all this scattered out grass.
Why not?
And go straight to the mats, because I mean, they're not always, there's not always a flipping situation.
Right.
But like, I'll fish around, I'll throw a buzz bait or something, as I'm working my way up to it. And if you're working your way up to it, you start getting a few bites, it may be worth just, if you're in a tournament situation, backing off. Like, don't pressure them. Start that way if you have a tournament or something and they're not biting. There's more than likely only one place they win. I mean, they probably just, yeah. I mean, and a lot of times you'll get like the clues, if you're around some of that matted up stuff and you hear one blow up onto the mat, or you hear the brim popping, which will, we call it, almost like popcorning is what it sounds like, just popping around. And just because you have a lot of brim in an area doesn't always mean there's bass there. Like like growing up, like they're like, man, if you hear them brim popping, that's the mat you got to be in. Well, I mean, if you sit at that mat for an hour and you hear all these popping and ain't nothing eating, there's probably nothing there.
Like, you're getting burned. Is what's happening.
I mean, you need to move around and find some active fish, because a lot of times if you stay around an area long enough, one's going, and it may just be one. One can give them away. Like, one flipping bite can give away the best place on the lake. Like, it's all it could take, and you may not even know it. Like, you may be practicing. I'll be going down through there and get a bite, and it'd be a 5.5 pounder, and I just keep rolling. And like, that's the only bite I got. And then all of a sudden you happen to roll back through there at the right time on the tournament day, and it's just bam, 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 and that, within 20 yards of there. So just that's right one. Yeah. And like I said, it only takes one. And I mean, that's kind of grass fishing in a hole. Like, you can fish and fish and fish, and all of a sudden you just get one bite, and that's where the freaking mother load is.
Yeah, it's a fun bite, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference when you go from fishing with a 7-foot medium action spinning rod to a 7.6 to 8-foot heavy, extra heavy flipping stick with 50 to 80 pound braid and a 1 ounce weight. So while we're on that topic of like rods, what is your ultimate like flipping setup? Do you have one? Do you have multiple ones for situations? But like rod, line, reel, we already talked weights, but like maybe the type of knot that you use.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the hooks and like the sizes based on the baits that you use.
Yeah. So okay, I basically have two different setups, and it I know we've talked about weights, but it's weight depending on what rod I'll pick. Anytime I'm using like a 3/4, I'm probably just gonna have a 7.6, to be honest. I mean, I'm not a big, real heavy broomstick rod. I used to be when I was younger, but I mean, as I've gotten older and I've experienced this and experienced that, fish loss here, fish loss there, you kind of figure out kind of what works for you. And basically what works for me is I use a 7.6 heavy. I usually use, it's an Arc Invoker Limited rod. It's a full cork handle. It's a 7.6 heavy. It's got a little bit of a parabolic action to it though. So like, you don't really want to like jack them in this stuff. Like, I know everybody's like, slack line, man, hit them as hard as you can. Well, the way that all sets up, and I'll break it down in a minute, you're not really wanting to do that with a real stiff rod. So you kind of just want to lean them into them, and that parabolic bend kind of just drives that hook in instead of, like ripping a big gash in them. So 7.6 on a 3/4, and basically, and normally when I get to a 1 ounce, is when I change. I use a 7.10. It's a heavy as well. It's not I don't go for that extra heavy stuff. And it's got that same parabolic bend to it. I mean, that rod's going to bend, probably 24 inches down. And basically, I mean, that's again, you just kind of want to lean into them when you get that bite. And sometimes it's hard. Like I'll jerk on some of them because they will knock like 3 foot of slack in it. Like it goes through it. Yeah. But I mean, the more you do it, the better. You'll get accustomed to like he hits it real hard, and then you'll just want to like tighten the line down and check him. And basically, you can still jerk pretty hard, but like picking up that slack and then jerking is going to help you a lot instead of that shock. With him having that
with that big weight, right?
That's exactly right.
Because when you lean into them, basically when you load that rod, it's helping pin that hook as opposed to popping them out.
Yeah, exactly. So with what you're saying, so basically, if you have that 1.5 ounce weight, and I like to tie a snell knot, that's the only knot that I will actually punch with, like when I'm up and down, like pretty much vertical with these fish. I don't like a snell knot like flipping, like pitching around, like way out. So I guess basically we're not pitching. This is like true old time flipping, like straight down, like pulling a string sometimes. But like if I'm pitching like way away from the boat is when I use like a normal, Palomar or a uni. But straight down punching, like straight up and down, is when I like the snell knot, just because of the way when the weight hits the hook, it kicks the point of the hook up. But also, like you just said, if you jerk real hard, dude, when that weight hits, that hook is going completely up, like really fast, instead of just, kind of getting a little bit of a bend, and then it can turn. It's almost like a like a circle hook, like if you were saltwater fishing, you kind of just lean into them, and once it catches, dude, it's going to just drive in. Like you have a lot better landing percentage, especially with those bigger weights, just because there's so much in their mouth, and that you don't want to be blowing their mouth out and just kind of skin hooking them. A lot of times when you're doing that, or they're not eating it really well, you'll get them up on top of the mat and they'll be flopping around, and then they'll come off where you can like barely see your hook kind of like pinned to their little skin. So if you see that kind of situation, maybe not jerk quite as hard, kind of lean into them, maybe try and swap up baits. They just seem to not be getting it good. So that's kind of a key there. But yeah, 710 heavy is what I like when I get anything over an ounce. Hardly ever do I use a 2 ounce weight. Like, dude, it's just, I've never had that situation where it's just been that thick, and I think you're going to lose probably half of them that you hook. It's just, and that's part of it. I mean, you're going to have averages because you're, if you got real thick hyacinths like down in Florida or something on Okeechobee, or what used to be on Okeechobee, way back in them reeds, and you're dealing with 8-9 pounders, you're going to lose some, but that's the only way to get through it with a big weight like that. So I mean, you kind of take your losses with that, but that's kind of the setup on that. Line wise, man, I normally just go with 50 pound SX1 braid Sunline. Sometimes I'm not a big 60 pound guy on flipping, just because it doesn't go through as well.
Yeah.
And another thing that a lot of people don't understand is when that braid cuts through that grass, the bigger the diameter of the braid, the harder it is it's going to be to cut it. It's going to want to wad up more to where obviously people think 50 and 60 is not that much, but just a little bit, could cut a wad of eelgrass up better than 60 and get that fish out away from that and out in the open water where you've got a lot better chance of, landing it, instead of it wadding up down there and you got a 6 pounder down there thrashing his head wadded up. You can't get to him. So You want to have every, advantage going your way to get him out of that stuff after he bites. So I kind of stick to 50. You're not going to break it. Like, it's not going to happen. No. I mean, even if he does wad up, I mean, you just hold pressure on him and do your best you can to get in there to him. So, I mean,
that's an important tip too. Like hooking those fish, it's more important to use your reel than it is your rod. You just want to keep pressure.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes, dude, like I've hooked big ones. Like, I mean, I've caught giants doing this stuff, dude. And they'll have you down there, and dude, you just holding on. Like, you'll lean into one, and he's trying to go the other way, and you just sit there, and everything balls up. Well, like, pulling on, like, leaning up's not really going to do you any good. You just start easing your troll motor to him, and just like you said, just keep working your reel and get to him. And then when you get down there, you can kind of get the grass off of him. But pulling on him is probably the worst thing you can do.
Because as soon as you drop that rod tip.
Yep. Yeah, and you think about it, you drop the rod tip, you got 1.5 ounce weight, it falls to the bottom of his mouth, and that fit. I mean, because more than likely when he's been thrashing around that much, he's going to have a big hole ripped up. So I mean, you're kind of playing with fire there anyway. So that's a big deal. Definitely don't try and pull on them much. I mean, a little bit, you're not going to hurt anything, obviously, but don't just be like they're like straight line him and just pull him like it's
brilliant.
Yeah, sometimes it works, but I mean, your odds are definitely against you when you start doing that.
Gear ratio reel.
I use a 7. Reels. I use a 7-to-1. I use an Arc Gravity. It's a 7-to-1. I'm not a huge fan of the high gear ratio flipping. I don't understand. Well, I understand people's logic for, well, I get to flip more times during the day if I've got a 10 because I can get it in faster.
Yeah, but you
Okay,
lose the leverage and winching power.
what you're losing is like way better than getting, and the difference in a 7 and a 10 might be 4 cranks, like literally on a reel. So if I crank 4 more times, that might give me 3 more flips in a day. Well, yeah, that's great to have more flips, but if when I hook a 7-pounder way back up in a mat and I can't move my reel once I hook him, like them 3 flips become irrelevant. Like, and I mean, I've tried to use them. Like when they came out, like I bought some high. Like, man, that's a great idea. Well, dude, you'd flip over there and hook one, and I'm not even talking about he'd be wadded up. Like you'd just be like trying to get him, and dude, your reel's just turning. Like you have no gears.
Yeah, I mean, now this reel's junk.
It's like just trying to like ride that bike up the hill. Like you're just pedaling as hard as you can. You're not going anywhere. So I mean, I feel like a 7 is a good all around ratio. 6 is too slow. Like you're gonna wear yourself out coming back and forth, in and out. But a mid 7's good. Our 7-to-1 is. I've gotten really used to it. I really like it. It just works for me. I feel like it would be a good starting gear ratio for people if you haven't done it a lot. It's not going to be too fast. It's not going to be too slow. Just a really good happy medium. Your hook size is very critical. I feel like that's the most critical part of the whole equation. Besides the rod, the hook, the line, you can get away with whatever you feel comfortable with, really. The rod, action and the hook size is probably your biggest determining factor of how many fish you land. We kind of went over the rod, but the hook, everybody always wants to go bigger. Like bigger is better. Like bigger hook, bigger fish. I don't believe that at all. I feel like the bigger the hook, the more lever. And I'm trying to not. I'm giving out some juice, but I mean that's what we're here for.
Right.
The bigger the hook, you're going to have a lot of leverage with that big weight at the top of it, if that makes any sense. So the shank of a 5/0 hook is obviously going to be a lot longer than a 3/0 from actually the point of where the hook is to where the line tie is where the weight hits. So if you've got 1.5 ounce weight moving a 5/0 shank hook, dude, that thing's moving like crazy. And like we were talking about, when you
it's kind of getting stuck and caught more on weeds and grasses.
Exactly.
Right.
And that where that comes in is the gap once you've hooked the fish. So let's say you got a decent hook in him, like you got a good hook penetration. Well, you've got a 5/0 gap sticking out of the side of his face as you're trying to pull him in. Well, that's catching on every single thing coming out of there. And you get a real tough piece of grass, a piece of water willow that's washed in there. Well, dude, it's just going to hang, and all that's going to do is just create a problem and just start ripping something. It's either going to rip the grass or rip his mouth, and you never know which is going to give. So I like to use, if I can get away with it with the bait that I've selected, I like to use a 3/0. The Gamakatsu flip and punch, the Aaron Martin's the new hook. Is that the
blue label?
It's the blue label one. So it's got the tournament grade wire in it. And basically what I've found with that hook, it's probably my favorite flipping hook I've ever used because it has a very small diameter. But with the small diameter, with that tournament grade wire, is like, you're not going to flex it. It's not going to happen. So instead of having that huge diameter that's not going to flex, you're going to have a hard time getting that hook penetration. With the tournament grade wire, it's super slick. It's got that nano coating that it'll just slide right through there. With a small diameter, it doesn't take a lot of force at all. So you're getting very easy hook penetration. And with the 3/0, it's not going to come way out. A lot of times, like on the bigger fish that I catch, it's pinned against the roof of their mouth. It doesn't even come all the way through, which, smallmouth fishing, dude, when you pin one in the top of his mouth with that small, it ain't coming off. Like you're going to have to break it. Or like a lot of times, like I'll have to like bend my pliers or you'll bend that smallmouth hook, a drop shot hook, to get it out.
Have you ever broken it off in their mouth, the smallmouth, like real fast? Sorry for the tangent. I've gotten them so good in the top of the mouth, because I'm blessed and I get to catch thousands of them a year
every day.
But like, I've actually broken hooks off. I've got them pinned so deep in the roof of their mouth that when I go to give them a pliers, it just breaks. I'm like, man, I feel terrible.
I had some. I guess it was at Champlain. They would have it so good through their nose, like I would be trying to get it out, and the hook would pretty much just roll over and touch itself because it was so hard to get out. And that's kind of the same principle with that bigger hook. You're obviously not going to roll that flipping hook or bend it or anything like that. But you have that same concept where, dude, when it's flat on the roof of their mouth, they can't come off. They're not coming. It's not going to happen. And down there doing that thick stuff, them hook angles get real weird, and the way they eat it, and the way the baits fall, and it gets in their mouth. But I just feel like that smaller hook has a lot better landing percentage, just because they don't get a lot of leverage. When it does come through, it's not grabbing on a lot of stuff. So when I can get away with it, I like a 3/0. It's really good with like the Z Crawl Junior and the Z Hog Junior from Zoom. And then like the highest hook I'll go up to, or biggest I should say size, is a 4/0 in that same hook. And with that hook, it's got a really good keeper on it. It's got a 10 keeper. It doesn't have that metal that tears your bait really fast. But the key thing, the way that Aaron designed that keeper, is basically it cups it very well, which holds the bait good. But it has the edges are a little bit beveled, which makes it a little bit sharp. So when I set the hook, or when I lean into one, it's still tearing that bait. You don't want, I learned this. I learned this listening to Hackney a long time ago. When he's flipping, he don't care how many baits he goes through. When he sets the hook, or when you set the hook, you don't want that plastic anywhere there. You want that bait getting ripped off.
Yeah, it's just another thing in the way.
Yeah, it literally is just, now obviously, oh man, I'd like to save as many as I want. Well, would you rather save a few baits, for a couple cents, or would you rather land that 7-pounder? So I mean, so having a hook that is made to, it will hold the bait very well going in and out of that stuff, but also have the ability to rip that bait once you lean into one or set the hook. That's a huge deal. So they kind of really hit the nail on the head with the hook there. Another key thing that a lot of people don't realize that Aaron did with that hook, and I didn't realize this until right after I started using it, he moved the barb up a little bit closer to the point of the hook, which makes the penetration a lot easier. Now, you'll get into that deal where, oh, well, you'll lose more if it's that close to the tip, and possibly. But at the end of the day, the angle that he put that barb on, your hook penetration is all you've got way down in that stuff. So, I mean, the easiest way that I can find to get that hook in his mouth, that's the hook that I'm going to use, and that's what I've found with that flip and punch hook. It's just kind of got all of the right ingredients. And and I have noticed for people watching, a 3/0, just comparing a bunch of hooks like I used to use in the past, a 3/0 of that flip and punch hook almost compares to a 4/0 size of any other brand. So it's a little bit bigger. So if you're worried about looking at that 3/0 in a bait, it fits a Z Crawl Junior very well. Like, it fills up the whole bait. So where a lot of other companies, it's almost like a 3.5 or close to a 4. So just kind of a little tidbit there. The sizes are just a touch up. So that's kind of a little deal there. I'm trying to think of anything else hook wise. We talked about the snell knot. That's huge. I don't know how people still try to flip heavy cover without a snell knot. And it may be that they're not loading the rod, they're using the wrong rod, and they're losing a lot of fish with it, or they're jerking too hard. I feel like it has a lot more to do.
Set angles wrong.
Yeah, you want to come more straight up, punching wise, than kind of come to the side, just by the way that knot's making that hook do when the weight hits it. And that's why I mentioned earlier, it's always more of a vertical up and down presentation when I like that, because, man, when I was first tying that knot, I tied that snell knot when I was kind of pitching isolated cover, like a long way off, because 90% of the time you pitch it a lay down up on the bank, he's running to the side. Every now and then one will come right at you. Dude, when he runs to the side on a snell knot, good luck. Good luck. He's gonna run about 10 feet, and he's gonna come off and go like, gosh dang, I don't know why he didn't have it. Yeah,
the bait isn't even penetrated.
The hook's not even out of it. I'm like, what the heck? Yeah, I learned real quick. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'm going back to EWGs.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of EWGs. I've always just used
always a straight shank guy.
Yeah, I mean since they've come. I mean, obviously when I was real little, we used the round bend worm hook. I don't know. I never got on the EWG train, and people swear by them. And I mean, if that works for you, I don't want you to change at all.
Unless you're punching straight shank all the way.
Yeah, I always punch with a straight shank. But I mean, I have buddies that punch with an EWG. I don't know how they do it. I don't know why they do it. And they trust it. I mean, and they catch them, dude. I mean, they win money on it. And it's just, at some point, it does come down to a confidence thing. But again, I think with the right setup, the straight shank with a snell knot it's hard to beat.
Yeah, that's fair.
Day in and day out, like you've got to, and again, you got to find the right rod and the right hook set angle and all that. I mean, learning that takes time. I will say I have learned the hard way in tournaments what to use and what not to use, but I mean that's part of growing up.
Yeah, you're always learning. That's the best part about fishing, right?
Yeah,
Constantly learning.
that's why we all love it and why we get up at 3 a.m. every morning to go out there.
Unfortunately. So we did touch on punch skirts a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but what I want to touch on with it, does contrast matter? So like with the Z Craw Junior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you using the same punch skirt as the bait color? So like green pumpkin, or would you like switch it up? And why would you use a punch skirt and why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I like a punch skirt. Basically, if I like a punch skirt if I want to be flipping a jig and I can't get a jig to them. That's basically so
Makes sense.
a punch skirt kind of comes into line with like because all right, well, I'll just back up because I was going down a wrong rabbit hole and I didn't want to go that way. We don't have that much time. A punch skirt kind of it defeats the purpose to me if you're in matted up stuff like real thick stuff because it goes away from what I said about having a streamlined bait. Well, now you've got a skirt that can't go through that stuff. So I like a punch skirt like where if it's more like the trash pile deal. Like once I get through that real, first base layer, there's nothing down there to kind of hold me up. Or flipping reeds, like if you've got a bunch of reeds laid over, or flipping water wheel like we do here at the house a lot. I use a punch skirt a ton to where you can get a lot of bites on a jig, but you can't get a jig to those fish. It's impossible. So that's kind of where, and I will say with the punch skirt, if you were punching this stuff with a 3/4 and you move to a punch skirt, you're probably gonna have to bump up to an ounce, just because of obviously all the the skirt holding you back.
Catches.
Yeah, but that's where I like to basically if I think the fish are biting or if they're very aggressive. I've seen that happen a lot too. Like you're flipping around and you're flipping a basic Z Crawl Junior and catching. As soon as the bait goes through, they're getting it. Well, you may be able to get a bigger bite with a bigger profile. So I mean, if I feel like they're very aggressive or they're eating really big bluegill, like if there's some bluegill beds around and they're bigger than average size, where I can get a bigger profile deal, that's where I like that. But yeah, on the color deal, I as far as contrast, and I'm not trying to sound like I know, I really don't think it matters. Because a lot of the times, dude, they hit it so fast. Like most of the time,
it's such a reactionary bite, right?
Right. Now, do I think there's a difference in a green one and a dark color, like a light, real natural, and a dark color? Absolutely, because I just think it sometimes it shows up different in the dark because it's dark under there, like it's black. Like,
yeah.
And maybe a contrast color would work in a certain situation, but I don't know how you would ever scientifically be like, well, he would have only bit it if it was a blue bait and
there'd be a June bug skirt with a black and blue bait, and I got to dye the tips blue.
Correct, and it's got to be a painted weight. It can't be silver.
Now is that the general rule of thumb? Always a painted blade. Wait, like black.
I know the our tungsten at ARC that I use it's that no fade, no chip deal, and which is great. I mean, I don't think you need to go out there with a silver bullet as your weight every time, especially in real clear water. But I mean, dude, I've caught a bunch of bass on a chipped up weight tungsten, 10 years ago, like that was fading off and stuff like that. Now,
I don't mind that honestly, because when it gets through there, if it's dark, the silver might refract light a little bit, and all of a sudden it's something else. So I really need to eat that. It's like an eyeball on a fish.
Absolutely,
like it's
absolutely.
what they can focus on.
And sometimes I think you can if it's a really shiny situation, like it's not like that flat silver that doesn't really have a lot of flash to it, but like you get it where it was painted and it comes off.
Got some patina on it. Some spit shine.
That's right. Put some Armor All on that thing. McGuire. There you go. There's a sponsor plug. Armor All, call me up.
Love it.
But yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of light penetration through those mats, so even that real shiny could, it could, flash a little bit, and those fish might think it's a shad or something up under there, or some type of bait fish, and make them react to it a little bit better. So, excuse me, I don't. Like I said, I use ours and I use the no fade because it just looks a lot better. It looks a lot more natural. I think it's a lot bigger deal in a real clear water, shallow situation where they can see very well. But man, if I'm flipping a mat in 8 foot of water and it's dark under there, like I don't think it can really tell. I don't think it would hurt anything. In some, like you said, in some instances, it very well could help. And the only way to figure that out would be, you know, I mean,
let's go put 7 punch rods on the deck and
they try them all out.
Yeah.
Or you and your buddy get out there and say, all right, I'm using the shiny one, you're using the dark one. I'll let you run it half the day in the front, and we'll see which one, you know, tries to do better. But again, I don't from the color deal. I don't think contrast makes that much difference in that situation. I think it makes a big difference in fishing. Don't get me wrong, but in that situation with the punch skirt, a lot of times it's shallow, like pitching there, he gets it, or you know, it goes to the bottom. You hop up one time and he's got it. So I mean, it's that's kind of how I mean, I'm sure there's people that disagree with me. I mean, I know people in fishing agree on everything. Obviously, here of late.
Oh man,
I'd throw that out there. I'm sorry.
Oh man, that is an entirely different segment for another day, Wes. We're not going to go there today because that has nothing to do with punching.
No, I can tell you.
I'll tell you what.
Go ahead.
I know where you're going with this. And have you ever flipped grass watching your bait go down and you see a big largemouth smoke it? You're going to change your mind and be like, "This is."
Absolutely. I've never had that opportunity to do it. I feel like maybe some of those Texas lakes where you're flipping 20-foot high drill and it's only 10 foot off the bottom. I could see where that would be like, this is amazing. This is the funnest thing ever. Like I'll never not do this, but I mean, the stuff we do around here and that stuff up north, I mean, you might as well take it off your boat. I mean, truthfully.
Unless you're going smallmouth fishing.
Yeah, now I will say, if you're going back and forth, you might better keep it on there and just kind of put you a block of wood under that Ultrex and just kind of ease around up shallow. And you want to ease back out there to them alewife chasers, you just drop it back down.
Perfect. So
I think some of them smallmouth are so stupid chasing them alewives. You could drop that big weight down there on them, they'd fall it to the bottom and eat it.
Oh, probably.
Yes, sir.
They're not just put a minnow style bait on.
Yeah,
right
just put some kind of silver white looking thing down there and just flip it out there. That you won't be having to fight him for 10 minutes. You just reel him straight up and boat hook him. Yeah, it'd be the end of that.
Oh man, now there's an idea. I think we're gonna have to invent a way to hang a minnow with a bait caster, so you just reel.
Yeah, just really, man. I mean, I don't know. I mean, now don't get me wrong. They're strong fish. They fight and they don't give up. They don't give up when you get in the boat, but I just don't know if they're quite as strong as you think they are when you get on them, with heavy duty stuff. Now, I mean, they'll kill a largemouth if you tie them, head to head. But,
you put smallmouth in a fish tank with a largemouth. That largemouth ain't living more than a couple hours.
No. I would like to see I have an argument. A Coosa River spotted bass and a smallmouth. I would like to see that head to head.
They just make babies, and then you got
that would be dangerous. That'd be dangerous.
You got some super bass.
Be the most aggressive jumping because I mean, see those spots they don't jump much. They just dig, they dig and dig and dig. Where you got a freaking, them Champlain smallmouth are the jumpingest fish I've ever seen in my life. When we had that back to back a couple weeks ago, we went from you hook one and you automatically please don't jump, quit jumping. And these other ones are you hook them and they're just digging. You're like, well, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a 3-pounder or a 5-pounder. We'll see in about 10 minutes when he gets up off the bottom 50 foot.
Oh, it's so true. I hate smallmouth in current because they either come up and jump and go right back down, or they just stay down and they're like, God, I got a giant. And they give them a boat, and you're like, what the heck? You're 2.5 pounds, you little jerk. It makes me so mad.
Back on the punching topic. That is one of the most intriguing things I think that makes me addicted to it. Dude, when you flip in there and that line jumps, it could be a 12-inch or a 12-pounder. And it's just I don't know. And obviously it's kind of people's like, well, it's fishing. I'm like, yeah, but dude, when you've got all that sensitivity, that braid, that tungsten weight, dude, and it thumps through your rod, it's like, oh my god. And you do it long enough, when a big one eats it. I've been practicing before, and I just use a screw lock on my bait, just pitching around, dude, and one will get it. And I'm like, God, I would give anything to see how big that bass is.
You lean, and you're like, oh boy.
You lean, dude, and it's or you flip in there, and the whole mat picks up. It just sits there, and you pick it. You're like, man, I wonder if that's a bass. You pick it up, it's just welded, and it starts easing down. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm hitting the butt of my rod, please let go, please let go. And a lot of times, them big ones, dude, they'll just sit there with it. They will not let it go. I mean, I've had them where I've had to pull. I couldn't see them, but I'm pulling and they just ripped my bait off the screw lock. I'm like, well,
that was big.
Wasn't really nothing I could do about that.
That's already down his throat at that point.
Yeah, for sure. I've caught some before. I've had to pull some out of mats that had my whole it was swallowed with a screw lock. The only thing that was sticking out was my bobber stopper.
You're just like, come on.
Yeah, and you finally, it'll finally just pop out. I'm like, man, I'm sorry, but I wish y'all would eat like that on tournament day.
No, never.
Yeah, no. And I think a lot of it is we get a lot more hyped up on Derby Day when one bites it. We don't let them, kind of feed it to them.
Yeah, it's true. Because we're always told that you got to get on them when they eat it that way because they'll spit it out just as fast. But
Yeah,
I don't,
sometimes.
I don't think that's
I've
true.
seen situations too when they're on it and they don't want to let go. Like it is unbelievable. And those are special days. Like everything's normally set up right. You found a group of active fish that hadn't been beat on. I have noticed like fish. I try to go up at Gunnersville a couple times every fall just to mess around because it's fun. But I've noticed like here in the last couple of years, like when one gets like if one thumps it, you better hit him pretty quick because like he'll sit there and he'll kind of just let it go real quick. He's like, oh, I ain't doing this again.
He's like, I know what that.
Yeah, yeah.
He's like, I was done for biting it, but I know what that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fast. But it's all reaction. So, Wes, I have one more question for you. It's
All
our
right.
Do It Molds juice of the show. And this is for someone who struggles with punching, what is one tip you would give them to become more proficient?
The you got to have the right equipment to be very successful at it. And I mean, that kind of comes with any kind of fishing. And what also comes with any kind of fishing to get better at it is to commit to it. You have to go to a place where it is known, it's known to be good. Don't try and force it somewhere where like it's never been a thing. Like, oh, there's Andy out there flipping some grass that nobody's ever even seen a bass in. Like there's no bass live up there or something. So like, you know, like go to like if you're not very good at kind of do a little bit of research, know where once the grass gets up, you can kind of go pitch around and catch a few. And I mean, basically, just try and find your most high percentage areas in that wherever you're at. Whether it be near a channel swing, leading into a big creek or a backwater where those fish are going to be coming, out of their summertime deal, wanting to get back in those shallow water, following the bait fish. And like I said, you got to commit to it. Like you got to go out there with 3 punching rods with all 3 different size weights, maybe 3 different baits, and just put your head down and go through it. It's kind of like what I had to do, like learning how to deep crank. Like, man, I didn't have anything else in my boat but some deep cranking rods, and everywhere I went, I just threw it. And you kind of you catch one. Man, it's amazing what one bite will do. You get one bite, then you can kind of put some pieces together. Then you get 2 bites, and then you're like, oh, dude, I'm freaking Greg Hackney, or I'm Kevin Van Dam. Like,
I can do this. And
yeah,
then you go 8 hours without a bite, and you're like, what did I do wrong?
I cannot do this. Yeah. And I mean, that's the bad thing about flipping is it can be it can be like wide open, like bam, bam, bam for 30 minutes, and then it's gone because you hit the right little area. Or, you can have a really good lake where you can kind of do it around and, have a really good day about it. It just kind of, you have to pick your poison. But my biggest, advice would be just kind of, go out there, put your head down. And I mean, the way the world is today, with all the information that's available, you can, look on YouTube and some, like I said, I keep going to Hackney. I mean, he's one of the best flippers there's ever been. Denny Brower. You'll pick up on little things like you can take what I said and take what he said and take what somebody else said and kind of form it all together and maybe make your best setup and everything out of it. So that's kind of what I
about
did.
fishing. It's all about your personal confidence.
Exactly.
You can only take what somebody else does so far because not everything works for everyone.
Exactly. And again, you can have a YouTuber that may think he's the best flipper or whatever from watching YouTube videos. Till he gets out there and puts that, gets in that grind and he's got grass laying all over his boat from boat flipping big ones. Like that's a whole different deal than just watching somebody do it on a video.
Yep. And that bite is so addicting. My favorite part about like flipping, punching type days when you come home and your forearms hurt, your ribs hurt,
ribs are bruised. Yes, sir.
Because because it's like a quick snap to set that, but it's also like a lean,
all leaning.
Yeah. So it's just like pop, and you're like, you just go, and you're like, I always come home. And I always have like a bruise right here and then right across my ribs. I'm like, I can't do this again tomorrow. And then you wake up and you're like,
I'm going again. Yes. Yeah. You were sitting there at the boat when you got back to the house. You're like, man, I might go like throw a drop shot or something more. And you wake up like, no, I'm going to do that again.
Yeah. Because like they might not bite it today, but if they do, I'm going to have a time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Like I love I love taking the smallmouth stuff out of the boat and just be like, I'm going flipping today.
I know you do because every time you do it, you post on Instagram your story. You're like, all green tomorrow, baby. I'm like, that's my boy. That's my guy.
I'm like, I'm going.
Yeah.
Like and now I'm sad. Like I don't know if you saw my post recently, but I was like, I think this is my last largemouth day.
Might be over.
Yeah, it might be over.
Golly.
Sad.
That's depressing.
Yeah, no, we're gonna squeeze in a day or two more because there's There's a couple lakes around me that get really special in October, and you can
Mhm.
catch some giants, like flipping
Golly.
grass and ripping a chatterbug and stuff. So if I get a blow off day, you already know I'm going largemouth
I ain't
fishing.
no doubt. Yeah, we're gonna go lean on some.
Yeah, we might only get 5 bites, but we're
That's
going
all.
to lean.
That's fine. I would go out there and do it. That's kind of how I am. It's bad with me flipping, swim jigging, and throwing a frog. One bite and I'm ruined.
Yeah,
Like that's
you're
like
like,
my buddy will call me during practice. Like we were I don't even remember where we were at. We were at one tournament and it was like 3/4 of the way through the first day of practice. He said, "How's practice?" I said, "I've had 2 bites." He said, "What were they on?" I said, "They were both swimming a jig." He said, "Oh, you're screwed." He said, "What have you been doing all day?" I said, "Swimming a jig." I said, "I only need 5 a day." He's like, "Yeah, I hear you."
you're 10 hours in, you got
Yes, I've got 2. They were real good ones now, and that's what I said. That's my heart. I mean, they were big ones. Yeah, I hear you.
Well, I mean, it also gives you a clue because they're grass fish when they eat that, right? Like if you catch one
Most of the
somewhere in a
time.
swim jig, there's
Yeah.
probably more in that little area, and you're not burning it to the ground. You're
Right.
covering water trying to find the next area.
Oh, don't worry. It will burn your ass sometimes.
Oh yeah,
You think burning down? Oh, it'll burn it down. All right. To
it'll
about
burn you.
to about a 92nd place finish. Because man, I had 6 bites. I only caught 1, but man, it was awesome. I just kept thinking they were gonna get it. Yeah, you got it.
We'll
All right.
miss about it's like that popper bite when they swirl like 8 feet behind it
Yeah.
and you don't know why.
Oh yeah. I fished a team tournament Saturday with Dad at Neely, and I had like a 5-pounder come up behind a popper like 5 foot, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, what were you even doing? And I wasn't even working it fast. I was like a bloop, bloop, and it just swam up behind it like literally 4 feet and just kind of rolled with its mouth open. I'm man,
You are not a smart
you
bass.
need glasses or something. Like, probably
nuts.
it was probably the skinniest bass in the lake because I mean he ain't gonna catch nothing. Like, I mean,
He's on his way out, poor fella.
probably. I went back and fished that little root ball like 4 times, and it never. I'm like, it's
He just moved along.
yeah. He saw it. And he's like, I'm gonna mess with him. That's Wes up there. I'm gonna go mess with him.
Got that arc wrap skeeter. Yep.
Oh yeah. No, not today, buddy. Not today.
I've seen this trick before. Yeah, you probably have every fish in that lake numbered.
I don't know, man. Sometimes I think I do, and sometimes I'm like, man, there ain't a bass swimming in here.
Well, that's Alabama.
Yeah.
It's not New York. Up here, you just have them numbered if you figure out what they're doing. So, but Wes, I'm going to end it up here. We went really long, but I want to say thank you for joining me here.
Absolutely.
Punching out this awesome episode of Punching the Grass in the Fall because it is a great way to catch giants.
I see what you did there. That's a good one.
Hey.
But it is, yeah. Man, it's one of my top 3 favorite ways to fish, and I'm really fortunate to be able to do it around here in the fall. And I mean, like I said, anybody who wants to do it, man, it be ready because when you start getting some bites on it, like you said, it'll
all
be
you want to do.
It's all you'll think about.
Yeah, it drives Bailey nuts, and this is the last rabbit hole because this is a long episode. But every time Bailey's like, "I want to go smallmouth fishing," I'm like, "Not me. Like, no. I'm bored.
Let's go dob around a little bit.
Let's go dock fish or fish some grass, some deep grass.
Hear some braid sing or something.
I don't even care if I catch one. Like I just
want to do
something different. Yeah. So, all right, man. Well, I want to say thank you again. I'm going to let you run now as I close this out, and we'll chat soon, buddy.
Sounds good, buddy. Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. We'll talk, buddy.
See you, man.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for joining and listening to this week's episode here on the Lure Lab. We appreciate it as always. And if you're on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Leave some comments down below if you like punching and flipping some beautiful grass. And if you're on MP3 like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review so this episode and show can be seen to more people who love bass fishing as much as we do. And until next Saturday, we will see you then.